the Astromaterials Research Group at Johnson Space Center. And it's our pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Stephen Reinhardt, Director of Planetary Research Programs and Science Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters. Stephen, it's yours.
Okay, now it's a good afternoon. All right, well, there we go. So thank you all for coming. I'm very happy to talk about the RNA program. I will tell you just off the bat that I think things are going pretty well, and I'm very happy with where we are right now. So hopefully you'll share my optimism and be happy with where we're at as we talk about some of these things, all right? So just get things going. Start out with 2 big announcements. These are the same announcements I made last year and the year before. We just last week put out 2 calls. One is looking for people who are interested in coming to headquarters, either as an IPA or on a detail. If you're interested in coming to headquarters for a couple of years, please go take a look. Feel free to call me up and talk to me about what that is. We're interested in having good people come to help us out in running all the things we do. The second one is that we have the call for self-nominations or nominations of PAC members now open. I realized when I was looking at my slides right before this that I made a mistake. Last year we were looking particularly for planetary defense. This year we're looking more for habitability and sample science kinds of folks, but everybody is welcome to apply. We encourage everybody to apply if you're interested. Again, there's a link. You can go read the call. While the PAC is mostly scientists, we do also encourage other members of the planetary science community to get involved, engineers, program managers, and so on, because it is not, while it is science driven, it's not all scientists in the community, and we want it to be representative of the community. The other thing I wanted to say about this is that we have extended the tenure of a current PAC members by 3 months, so that they now end their tenure at the end of the calendar year. And the reason we did that is that we do the first meeting of the year should be in person all the time, which means that we can have our first meeting with new members that's an in-person meeting, not a virtual one, and that will help get that group really going smoothly from the get-go. All right, now to the stuff you actually care about. First off, this is the final data on the ROSES 21 program. Most of you in the back are probably going to have a very hard time reading this, but that's why these slides are made available. The short version is that ROSES 21 went well, with the exception of DALI. Every program had reporting dates of under 180 days, and selection rates were up. Come on, I got to get a little something for the up. Thank you. In general, things went very smoothly last year, and we're very happy with it. We'll move on to 22 in just a second. I have not previously reported at one of these about NOD programs. I did at the PAC several times now, and I would encourage you all to attend the PAC meetings, at least Lori's briefing and my briefing. If nothing else, the rest of it's good too. That's where you hear about these things before the LPSC. But these are the data from the NOD programs in the ROSES 21 year, so that same period of time. As you see, the selection rates are higher than they used to be. Again, huzzah. And you'll see this in a minute. I'll talk a little bit more about this, but the proposals that we're selecting are still really good. The biggest issue is that it was taking us too long to get notifications out on average. That's getting better, and again, I'll talk more to that in just a minute. Moving on to ROSES 22 programs, you can see we're mostly halfway done. All but one programs have their proposals in. The only one that's left is the Artemis 3 geology team. And about half the programs have had their results out. Again, selection rates are up, and we've been pretty good in terms of getting things out in a timely way. The one that's still sort of lagging is the MMX PSP. That's been lagging because it's an international partnership, and so we're consulting with JAXA before we make an announcement, but I expect that to be relatively soon. So as you may have heard several times, because I think Lori and I keep saying it at every opportunity, proposal pressure is down across all ROSES programs, almost all, with the exception being XRP. Every other program, proposal pressure is down. And in some cases, it's down significantly. The average drop amongst programs with due dates from Roses 20 to Roses 21 was about 33%. In Roses 22, it's dropped even further. It's now 43% down relative to Roses 20. Now, at the PAC meeting, I made this request. I asked that people will email me personally with a story of why you are not proposing. Not why your neighbor's not proposing, why you think your theory as to why people might not be proposing. I've got tons of theories, but I'm interested in some personal stories. I will tell you that I got 4 responses right after the PAC meeting with 6 different answers. And while I am loath in general to try to draw conclusions from relatively small numbers, in this particular instance, I will draw 2 conclusions. The first one is that all 6 reasons were different, which is interesting because I think my sort of Uber theory is that it's a lot of little things that are having impacts on people. And that's sort of borne out by what I've seen so far. But your stories will help me understand what's going on. So please please just email me and tell me your stories. The second conclusion I draw from the responses I got is that of those 6 things, 4 of them are things that I consider good. 1 of them is a thing I consider neutral, and only 1 something that I think is, ooh, that's bad. And the bad one is an institutional issue that's not in my control. I don't want to go into the details of these because I'm trying to obfuscate who's responding to me and so on. But good things are examples. Somebody said, I've been pulled into doing more and more mission work and I don't need RNA funds right now because I'm funded by the missions. Great. I don't see that being a problem. Somebody else, I had a kid and decided not to write proposals this year because I wanted to focus on my kid. I think that's a great thing too. So, but again, please tell me your story so that we can try to understand where the community is and why we're seeing this big drop in proposal pressure. I also wanted to show you the proposal pressure for NOD. NOD is down even further than the programs with due dates. That's sort of expected, but you'll see there on the right, the relative selection rates are way up compared to what they were before we instituted NOD. Now, part of the message here is that, particularly for those NOD programs, it's a great time to submit a proposal. So every time I say this, I keep thinking, every time I say this at a meeting, I expect to see a spike in proposals over the next month or 2, and it never happens. So, I'm just befuddled. Hopefully we'll see a little bit of a spike this time. So, all right. On NOD, a couple things I wanted to say. So I mentioned that our time to notification has not been great. It's gotten better. Originally, our goals were that half the PIs would be notified in 150 days and 90% in under 235 days. We've got a better goal now of 80% in 180 days. I think that's a better metric for a variety of reasons. But you can see in that plot on the right, that's the one that's important, that blue line is the notification times it was taking us in the first year of Roses. The red is where we are this year, year of the NOD programs. And you can see it's all shifted to the left. The notifications are happening faster. We are now at 50% of PIs are notified in 136 days. And 80%, we're not quite at the 80% in 180 days. We're at 76% of PIs are notified in 180 days. So we're almost to the targets we want to be at, and we're getting better all the time as we better understand how to run these things. I will also comment that one of the biggest reasons for the things being slow is the low proposal pressure. So because it takes more time to build up enough proposals to have full panels, which means that things tend to wait around a little bit longer before they get reviewed. So if proposal pressure goes up a little bit, we'll see that, I think, come to the left a little bit more and we'll be meeting all of our targets for notification times. Just to follow up on that, I also wanted to point out that if you compare Roses 20 to Roses 21, incorporating everything, both the NOD programs and the programs with due dates, our notification times have improved significantly. You can see there that red line is 180 days. And, they're not significantly different at 180 days, but more and more people are finding out in the 120-day to 150-day range than they used to. So we are speeding up, and that is in part due to the fact that NOD also reduces program officer load for the programs that have due dates. It's easier to work NOD reviews around the non-NOD reviews. And so that makes sort of organizationally simplifies things in some ways. So this is great. I think this is a really good result. Now, I mentioned this at the last PAC meeting, but I wanted to mention it again. We had talked about 2 years ago, we had talked about metrics for success, for defining what it meant for NOD to be successful. We've been working on refining those and improving those and adding a few metrics. Those top two, dispersion of proposal submission and reduced proposal pressure, were the two metrics we had sort of identified from the get-go. We've seen both those things, so yay. But we've added a couple others. One is time to notification, which I've just been talking about, and we're on the track to make that. We're not quite there yet, but we're close. And proposal quality. Now, how you measure proposal quality is a challenge because it is inherently not objective. There's a subjective element to it, and it's hard to necessarily compare one very good proposal reviewed by one panel to a very good from another panel, and so on and so forth. But what we have done is sort of look at the distribution of grades of things that have been selected, and you can see there on the left side this plot of NOD versus non-NOD programs, what that distribution of scores is. And so I mentioned this at the PAC meeting back in December. To me, the big message here is that in pre-NOD, what we were finding was that we were selecting almost all the excellence, most of the excellent very goods, but when it came to the very goods, it was we can pick one, maybe two, and then we were out of money. Now, but we wanted to pick more. Now it's more of a question of we can pick all the very goods or most of the very goods. We only have to say no to a few of them. So it's leading to we're getting to do more of the great science that was being left on the table before because we couldn't fund it. And so I think this is, again, a great result. Other factors that we're going to use as part of our assessment are community feedback. I'm not sure how we're going to get that community feedback yet. I will say that this is anecdotal, but the people who have come and talked to me about NOD, overall, the response has been incredibly positive. And the negative feedback I've gotten has been about things like notification time, which we know is an issue and that we're working on. Also interested in feedback from our program officers, because all the folks that work in PSD are working super hard, like everybody in the community, and trying to help them manage workloads is important too. And we want to make sure we're not killing them by trying to do things a different way than we used to. I'm just going to go ahead. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. There we go. I sort of already said this. Community feedback has been very positive. Program officer feedback has been mostly neutral. It is a little more work, it seems, but how much more work, we don't know. But I would remind you, right, we said that in that first year, we knew the first year was going to be hardest. Now we're coming to the end of the second year and it's getting easier. So I'm optimistic that we're going to think that it's successful in the end. But I'm trying to also keep an open mind because the point in this third year, we will be doing a real sort of internal review of whether we think it's successful or not. And we'll be talking about that at PAC meetings and so on to let you know what we think of this experiment. Again, I would also encourage people to, if you've got positive or negative things to say about NOD, let me know. I will particularly encourage people with positive things because people who have negative things to say are almost always willing to tell me. So, if you have positive things to say, tell me that too, because I don't want to get a biased sample. All right, another one of the experiments that we've done this year, this past year, was the just-in-time budgets. DDAP did an experiment where instead of asking people to submit full budgets, we asked them to just pick a price bin. And then if they were in that top set of proposals where they were potentially going to be selected, then to give us the full budget. verbal feedback from proposers and from reviewers and from program officers, I should add, was all very, very positive. Everybody liked it. Michael New did a little follow-up email to the PIs and to the AORs, which is the people who actually submit the proposals from your institution, to get some feedback. And you can see there the numbers. 65% of the PIs said they still had or chose to do a full budget. And only 29% said they didn't have to. All of the AORs said they had to submit a budget still. Interestingly, some of those AORs are from some of the people who said they didn't have to submit a budget. So I'm asking some questions about how much people understand what their institution is doing. But so maybe it's not as helpful as we thought it was. But I have two opinions about this. And I'm going to just tell you my opinions because I've got the stage. The first opinion is that this is reducing a barrier to participation. If your institution doesn't help you take advantage of that barrier, it's still a good thing for NASA to do what it can to reduce those barriers. So it is worth doing if for no other reason than that. And I guess that is actually also the second part of the second opinion. We can't make your institutions allow us to help you. But if we make it an option, you can push on your own institution to say, hey, if they're not going to ask us for budgets, why are you making us do it? So, but that's on you, not on me. I can't tell institutions what to do. We just received the second year of DDAP proposals with this just-in-time budgets. The review is not done yet, and we'll be looking at how that works out again this year and keeping track of it. But if things keep going well, I think we'll start thinking about whether we want to apply this to some other programs as well. Again, feedback on this, I encourage you to give us feedback about what you think about these things. But again, like for both NOD and for just-in-time budgets, in my mind, these are reducing barriers and they're making it easier for some people, not necessarily for everybody, but it's not making anybody's life harder. And if it's not making life harder for anybody, but it's making life easier for somebody, it's a win. The other big thing another big thing from the past year is for the first time, we had the Planetary Science Enabling Facilities call, or just facilities as I usually call it. And we had 25 proposals. This was in response to the National Academy study that said we needed some more facilities to support community science, particularly science with samples. And so we wrote and put together this call, and Aaron Burton, who was on detail from Johnson, and Kathleen Vanderkaden and Jeff Grossman did all the hard work of that call. And we got 25 proposals and we selected 10, which is great. And so we're really excited. You can see the list of facilities there on the left-hand side. There's now a web page that's up that gives a list of all these facilities. And you as members of the community have opportunities to go and use those facilities. How you get that access is something you need to look at the web page and look at the individual facilities on how you get access. But that's the whole point of this call, is that these teams have to make these available for the community to use, because we want the community to have access to tools that are not necessarily easy to get. We have also put on that web page some other facilities that have been NASA funded at some point in the past for doing science, or are funded through some other line of funding, because we asked them and we said, you don't have to, but a lot of people were interested in making themselves available to the community. So you'll see if you go there that there are other facilities out there where you can do some of your science with some of the great equipment that exists. Okay, so now enough of the past. I think the past couple of years have been pretty good. Well, at least in ROSES, maybe not in many other things, but let's talk a little bit about ROSES 23. So I'll start out with some of my standard reminders. NOD programs are open now. You can submit a proposal at any time. Only rule is you can't have submitted it within the last year. I.e., remember the rules on duplicate proposals. And compliance. I have said this every single time I've given any sort of talk at all, ever since I took this job. We are checking and strictly enforcing compliance on proposals. Remember, part of the rules those exist, part of the reason those rules exist is to make it easier on reviewers. and to ensure both readability and accessibility of the proposals for our reviewers. This is not whimsy. It is not arbitrary. It's there for a reason. So please make sure your proposals are compliant. In this year, one thing that's being added to the compliance list is that all COIs must be registered in Inspires and must agree to participation in Inspires. That is not actually our requirement. That is a requirement that comes from OSTP, but we are going to be enforcing it because we don't have a choice. And I think it's also a good idea, frankly, but that's another issue. Now, to help you with this, Megan Ansdell, one of our program officers, wrote some scripts in Python to check proposals for compliance. These scripts don't necessarily check everything, but they do a lot. And when we use these scripts, we use them as a flag. And if a proposal gets flagged, we put eyes on it to make sure that it really is truly non-compliant. Those tools that script is now available in GitHub. You can go and download it and run it on your proposal and see if your proposal is compliant. Well, but caveat, we make no promises that it will catch everything. So use at your own risk. You should still do your due diligence to make sure your proposal is compliant, but this should help. SPD 41A, everyone's favorite topic. Data management plans are now turning into the Open Science and Data Management Plans, or OSDMP, because 3-letter acronyms aren't good enough. You've already, well, hopefully you saw in some of the previous talks about what that means. We are coming out with some additional guidance from planetary science. We expect to have that document out by the end of the month. It's basically done now. There's just some final checks and tweaks that need to be done before it gets out. But I expect that it'll be out by the end of the month. And that should give you, we've tried it very hard to make it sort of a one-stop shop so you can read that document and know what it is you need to do with your OSDMP. As I just mentioned, that list of facilities is now on the web. When you propose, you may propose to use those facilities, following the guidelines provided by the facilities on how you get access. We are also going to be expanding the use of triage a little bit, just a little bit. I'll say a little bit more about triage in a few minutes. And all of our programs are now moving to shared inboxes so that they have predictable email addresses and you don't necessarily have to look up which program officer is in charge. So that will make life a little bit easier. It also means that for us, that there's continuity. If somebody should leave or move to a different program, we don't have to modify 18 documents that list that I'm the program officer and now it's somebody else. It will just, same email address, we just fix it in one place internally to our system and it's transparent to you, the community. And then finally, of course, there's no data to report on ROSES 23 yet because it just opened a month ago. Planetary data ecosystem update. So this is a little bit more about SPD 41A. There you can see this coming soon, our division level policy. One thing that we have done that's different from most of the other divisions within the Science Mission Directorate is that we add physical samples to our definition of scientific information. If you're collecting samples, then those need to be archived in a way consistent with the SPD 41A policies. We also have happily been able to restore the T to PDART, so it's no longer PDAR, which means we're accepting tools once again to PDART program, the PDART program. Just as a reminder, the reason we had pulled tools out was that we were concerned that we were building bridges to nowhere. We give somebody money for 2 years, 3 years to write a set of software tools, and at the end of it, it has no home and it dies and it gets neglected, and that's not, there's no point of developing a tool if you don't keep it around for some period of time. So now the call, you'll see if you look in there that there are things in there to try to make sure that we have longer term support for those kinds of things, or a home for them to go to where somebody says, I will take responsibility for maintaining this. Then there are a number of other solicitations in Appendix F, which is the cross-divisional call. that are about either open software or, well, actually, they're all about open software, that are places you can go to do some additional work to support open science. This is the year of open science, and I really hope to see that planetary people are availing themselves of these programs to make our data and our software and all the science that we do more accessible to everyone. I said I would say a little bit more about this. Triage. So we've talked about this before. We've been doing triage within NOD, and so far it's been working pretty well. And this is not the first time. Astrophysics has been using triage for literally decades. It's been used in Finest or Finest. I never know how to pronounce that one. It's been used in that program off and on for years and years. And the advantage of triage is that it reduces by a little bit, not by a ton, the amount of work that both program officers and reviewers have to do in reviewing proposals. So what we do is essentially we draw a line, and the line's a little different for every program, but it's approximately at the good boundary. Proposals, as any of you who've done reviews before know, you write your review before the panel meets, you submit it, and then you meet to discuss. Well, if the average score of the reviews pre-panel is below a good, then we don't have the panel discuss it. Instead, we put together a concatenated review that is all the comments that were made by people in their individual reviews, that is then checked by the primary reviewer, the group chief, and the program officer to make sure that it's not obnoxious, and to make sure it's actually useful, but it never gets discussed in panel. Just for reference, you can see that plot. That means about 20% of proposals are being triaged out. It's a little less than that, but it's about almost 20%. The number of proposals in a given year that would fall into this category was 0.4%. So, you're talking about a couple of proposals in a given year. So we think that given the circumstances where we were already having a hard time funding all the great science, it's not like we were losing great science, we were just doing some different great science. So we think this is a worthwhile experiment if it reduces the effort. And so far, it looks like it is doing that. And in fact, just last week, we got feedback from a bunch of panelists on one of the programs that I won't name. And their overall response was, triage is great. We should do this more everywhere. So we're going to start trying to use it in some of our programs with due dates. We're going to see how it goes. But I'm optimistic that reviewers and program officers will both benefit from it, and that the PIs with those triage proposals will still get the feedback that allows them to write better proposals for next year. The other thing I wanted to say about reviews is, you all know this. I feel kind of silly even saying it, but the peer review process depends on reviewers. And this means all of you volunteering, or at least saying yes when you're asked to serve on review panels. It's critically important. It's called peer review for a reason. We need peers to help out with the reviews. Right now, virtual reviews remain the norm. I think our current guidance is that 85% plus of all reviews should be virtual. In PSD, almost all of our reviews are going to remain virtual for the moment. Now, there are pluses and minuses, pros and cons of virtual reviews and of in-person reviews. I will say that as far as I can tell, no consensus has appeared. There are some people who are adamantly pro virtual review, some people who are adamantly pro only in-person review. I personally think it's actually some of each. I think there are times when each one is the right answer. So I think that probably over time we will move to more of a mix of some things being in person and some things being virtual. But I don't ever want it to be this program always does it virtually. Unless there's a really good reason for it. So we'll see how that goes. One thing I want to think about, though, and I would welcome conversations with people in the community about how we mitigate some of the cons of virtual reviews. They've been getting better consistently since the pandemic started, and we suddenly found ourselves thrust into virtual reviews with no warning. But we're still learning and we're still getting better at it. I think one thing in there that we can particularly do to mitigate some of the challenges of vertical reviews is that we can communicate better. Both program officers to reviewers and reviewers to their group chiefs and program officers. One of the challenges that we've had is that when people travel and they go somewhere for a full week and they're sequestered in a room and can't leave the hotel, then we've got their attention all the time. With virtual reviews, people are still going off to teach classes, to pick up their kids from daycare, do things that are important that matter. And we're not going to say that you should stop doing those things. That reduces the inclusivity of virtual reviews. What we're saying is that you need to be very clear with your group chief and your program officer what those obligations are ahead of time, so that we can try to schedule things in a way that is an efficient use of everyone's time. Because you're right, if somebody doesn't tell us that they're going to be gone and the rest of the panel shows up, it's a whole panel of people who have now lost an hour of time, and it's rude. So try to help out and be communicative and talk to your program officer and your group chief about what your real limitations are. We can work with you. And if we can't work with you, we'll say, hey, maybe not this time, maybe next time, but we can't work with you if we don't know. I'm not going to say very much about this today. There was a long talk about this at the PAC. And I would encourage folks to go and look at the slides from that presentation. This is the PAC meeting that was the 28th of February and 1st of March. It was a really good presentation, but it is almost entirely about what SMD, well, it was about what SMD, the Science Mission Directorate, is doing, what our priorities are as a directorate for pursuing IDEA. I don't feel like enough of an expert to talk to all of the puzzle pieces on this slide. But I will say that having worked a lot with our IDEA committees at the SMD level and having a number of members of PSD on those committees, I'm really excited about some of the work they're doing. And I think that we're making some real progress in advancing towards a better culture of inclusion. So there's a long way to go, obviously, but we'll get there 1 inch at a time. So and we are inching along. Finally, not finally, I forgot how many slides I have left. This is just the PSD budget breakdown. You've already seen these pie charts elsewhere, I believe. I just wanted to point out a couple things there on the right-hand side with the FY23 request. You can see that sort of goldish colored wedge. That's where RNA lives, also known as planetary other. I'm not making that up. That's actually what it says. It's planetary. RNA lives in there along with a few other things like the PDS and some other things like that. But that's where it lives. But that's what we call the planetary RNA portfolio. But RNA research funding actually comes from a lot of different places. If you look there on the left, you'll see 70 for the FY21 actual numbers will be actually spent in 21. 73% of that money in the planetary other was spent on competed research and analysis. All those other wedges, if they have a little percentage next to them, that's approximately what percentage of that wedge was also spent on competed programs. So for instance, in that Mars exploration wedge, it says about 4%. That's MDAP and PSP programs and things like that, right? Those come out of that, not out of the RNA portfolio within the planetary other wedge. Another way to look at this is that research budgets over time. This is just a sand chart, and this is just the sand chart of the different sources of money that have gone to fund research. You can see, of course, that RNA portfolio is the vast majority of that, and that it has been trending upwards. We had a little bit of a dip there in 2019, and it was flat in 2020, but we're working our way back up again. Hopefully, we will continue working our way back up. I will say that both Lori and I are committed to trying our damnedest to make sure it keeps going up. So, and we like the decadal recommendation that it should be higher than it is. So Yeah. But you'll see that there are obviously other contributions from the Mars program, from Discovery and so on. And all that together means we're spending a little over $250 million in 21 on competed research programs. Finally, and now I really am closing on the end, we've had a lot of personnel changes in the last year. It's been very turbulent, some good and some bad. We've lost a few people, mostly, well, almost entirely for good reasons. Doris Dow went off to do a detail in astrophysics. She hopefully will come back later this year. If she doesn't, we're going to have words. Lucas Paganini and Melissa Morris both got hired as program executives, Lucas in astrophysics and Melissa in PSD. Adriana, as many of you know, retired. Aaron Burton finished his detail and Catherine Walker finished her fellowship. And I've probably missed some people here too, because I can't keep track. But we've also had a lot of people coming back in. So Nick Lang joined us as an IPA. Casey Hansen and Curtis Williams both joined us as well. David Smith transferred from Ames to headquarters. And we have two people, Shahida Aslam and Jose Luis Chavez, who've come as halftime details. I'm excited about all these folks. They're all fantastic. Jose has just joined us, and I wanted to call him out because he's actually a programmer. He's not a scientist. And we're doing a little experiment to see how a programmer might help us simplify our management of programs and make our lives easier. And I think that's kind of, that's one of those things that we need to do internally, but I think y'all should know that we're trying to figure out how to make our programs run more smoothly. So that we'll see how that goes. And I will close my last slide by asking, I will make this symmetric to Lori's talk, where she opened by asking all of the people from PSD to stand up, by asking them all to stand up now at the end of my presentation. So all the PSD people from headquarters, please stand. None of these programs would run without all of the spectacular work that these folks do. And I want to tell you, I'm grateful every day, almost every day, for the things that they do. If you get a chance, say hi, say thank you. Early career folks, I will tell you, no time spent talking to a program officer is wasted. So introduce yourself and just say hi. So, and with that, I'm going to stop and take questions. I'm even ahead of schedule.
Remember, for everyone coming up to the mic, to state your name and affiliation.
Amanda Hendricks, Planetary Science Institute. I've got a couple of questions for you, Stephen. Thank you for sharing everything with us. About the no due date program, I'm gathering that reduced proposal pressure was a goal of instituting that, because you said you used that as a metric and you have a check mark next to it. And yet you kind of seem to be wondering why there's been reduced proposal pressure. So I'm wondering if you can connect the dots on that for us. And then I'll do my next question.
Okay.
Thanks.
This is an easy one. So NSF, when they did their no due date experiment, which they called something else, but not as a cooler name. When they did their experiment, they saw a drop in sort of 20 to 50% in proposal pressure in different programs. And that's attributed to a lot of different things. Some of it is things like people saying, I'm gonna wait another month to submit because I can make this figure. There's one little bit of analysis I want to add to my proposal. So the mean time between reproposals becomes not 12 months, it becomes 14 months or 15 months. And right there, you've got a 20% drop in proposal pressure. So we expected to see a drop in our NOD programs in the 20 to 40% range with the introduction of NOD. We did not, but that can't explain the drop in proposal pressure for our other programs.
Right, but I'm talking about NOD.
Right.
So
if I take that there's been a 43% drop in every program on average, and then I add on top of that the expected 20 to 30% drop that I expected to see in NOD, Did I see exactly what we're seeing?
Okay.
What I don't understand is not that extra 30%. It's that 43% that's everywhere. That I don't understand.
Right. Okay.
And just go back for 1 second. Reduced proposal pressure was not an explicit goal of NOD. It was an expected side benefit. Because it is better. It will reduce the burden for reviewers and program officers if there are fewer proposals to review. And if we're still able to get the good proposals and make good selections, then everybody's winning.
Okay.
So yeah, it wasn't a goal, but it was perceived as a side benefit.
I don't know if everybody wins from that, but anyway. So let's see. So you talked about how to quantify proposal quality and trying to do that. And I was wondering about quantifying review quality.
I'm trying to, I would really like to get ChatGPT to like, I joke. So yes, I have been, so I've had this discussion with a lot of program officers. You know, every review before it goes out has a program officer reading it. And this is a great group of people. If they see a review that's really bad, they catch it. Now, sometimes reviewers make mistakes. This happens, right? When you're reviewing over 1,000 proposals every year, you can't expect that every single time, every single reviewer is going to get it all right. So mistakes happen, and sometimes there are some bad reviews. That was true before. I think if you're talking about the danger of bad reviews, that has nothing to do with NOD. That might have more to do with virtual.
Right. I wasn't talking about
right. But from what we've seen, from what I've seen from looking at some of the reviews and looking at some of the ones that in particular have been flagged as bad reviews, they're no different than bad reviews before from in-person panels. Like they still happen. They appear to happen at about the same frequency. They're still rare. They're still very rare. The vast majority of reviews are well written, are pointing at real weaknesses or strengths, and are helpful in a reviewer doing a new proposal. So I don't see any difference from what I've seen. I don't know how to measure that in a concrete, objective way. It is inherently subjective.
And do you collect data that might be out there on the review panels and career stage, kind of
the demographics? The demographics, no, we do not collect data, although Michael's raising his hand.
So whenever anybody registers with Inspires, you are offered the opportunity to take part in a demographic survey. That includes reviewers as well as proposers. My office will be doing an analysis of the demographics of our reviewers soon, next couple months. So we will know some of that.
But let me just.
But it won't be at the level of programs.
Yes, PSD does not have access to that data.
PSD does not have access to that data.
Right,
those data are the most we will give PSD is results of analyses. We won't give them.
Right.
And that's because of the agreement we have with the Office of the Chief Scientist, who actually owns those data.
Yes. So PSD, we do not have that data. Michael and his team have that data and will share results with us when they've got them.
Okay. Thank you. And then finally, one quick thing is that, and we talked about this a little bit the other day, but just to say it again, I'm not sure that sending Stephen Reinhardt their personal stories is a really thorough way of cataloging the community's feedback on the NOD program.
It's absolutely not.
Okay. So how are we going to do that and really assess in a data-driven way how NOD is affecting the community?
That's an excellent question. And I don't know the answer. I don't know, like, we have talked about doing a survey. I don't know that we can get a survey out in time because getting surveys through OMB process can take a long time. If they'll even approve it, which is there's no guarantee that they even approve such a survey. So what I know is that what I know I can do is anecdotes, and I can ask other people for anecdotes. I can ask the ags to like come back to me with how did you know, in your ag meetings have a discussion of how you felt about it.
Yeah.
My biggest concern with any of these things is that the loudest voices are always the people who have something
Right.
to complain about, right? And again, you know, it's all anecdotal. It's all anecdotal, no matter how it's not data driven, because unless we do a real survey with real design by social scientists, and that would mean doing interviews with individual people and so on, we don't really have the sociological data to assess it. So the question is, how good is the anecdotal data, and is it good enough? I don't know. We're going to talk about that a lot over the coming months as we figure out how to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go to a question online from Shoshana Cole. Was there a difference in the no due date feedback or number of proposals from large versus small institutions? If a proposal, sorry. And have you received feedback about no due date from grant administrators?
Okay, that's a lot of stuff. So in the demographics for NOD, we don't see any statistically significant difference in the demographics for NOD than we do for regular programs. We thought we might see more proposals from small institutions. We don't see that in a statistically significant way yet. That doesn't mean it's not there, but if it's there, it's small. NSF saw a very small increase in the number of proposals from smaller institutions, but it took them several years to get enough data to actually see it at a higher than the 1 sigma level. As for the other part of grant administrators, I'm assuming these are grant administrators at universities and other institutions. I don't think I talked to those folks. So I have not gotten any feedback from that set of people.
Thank you, Louise Fox at APL. And when you come visit us, we can have you talk to our grant administrators and get some feedback. I think that we've been making.
You don't have to set that up. I would not be heartbroken.
That's fine. We'll probably invite them anyway. But anyway, yeah, this is very easy. I apologize if I missed it, but did you talk about introducing triage for all proposals or only DAPA proposals?
Nothing. Triage for NOD has been and is a standard. Right. We are starting to experiment with a few other programs. It's just a few. Like I think right now the only one that we're definitely doing it with is LDAP.
Okay.
Okay. But we're talking more. We're looking more at whether we want to keep expanding it, but we're going slowly because we want to get it right. Right. So like. I'm all in favor of doing new things and assessing them as we go and deciding whether we want to keep doing them. But this is one where it looks like it's going well. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the no budget or just in time budget experiment. It looks like it's going well. So let's start expanding it, but keep a finger on the pulse. And if something looks like it's going wrong, we can still pull back. So we'll do it a little bit at a time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I only used it once and it was a long time ago, but it was very effective. But I guess there's always the concern that there's, you know, we've all been on panels where there's one strong voice that can tank something. So yeah, just being a little bit careful about it.
But that's the beauty of the pre-panel reviews is that one strong voice isn't enough.
Right.
You have to have at least two of them have to be anti-proposal. Right. It takes, if you look at the I did a big analysis of distribution of scores for things that would get triaged under the system using the last 5 years of proposal data. Mm-hmm. And you don't have cases where one reviewer gave it an excellent and the other two gave it a poor. That just doesn't happen. So it was always cases where one person might give it a very good and the other two both give it fairs or fair poors, which, you know, nobody thought it was a great proposal.
Right. So it's fine to,
so it's interesting actually. It's kind of a fascinating distribution, but that's me geeking out on numbers. So
thank you.
Are there online? Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, we have
well,
a slew
let me
of
know when
online questions. Thank you. Another one quickly. For no due date proposals that are in less populous fields, these proposals have taken 8 to 9 months to come back from review. This in turn disadvantages early career researchers as we need to know our funding status in order to solidify more permanent positions. Is there a plan within no due date to even out notification times between subfields? This is anonymous.
So I will state that the observation itself is incorrect. There have been a few proposals that have taken that long. It is less than 10% of all proposals that have taken longer than I think it was the number was in my slides. We're over 90% within 235 days. And there have been a few that lagged really long time in the first year of NOD. That's not actually really happening much anymore. We've gotten to a place now where it is exceedingly rare, not zero yet, but we're getting there, that proposals take longer than 235 days. And the vast majority of people, like I said, 50% are being notified in 130 something, 136 days, I think it was. So I feel like, I agree. We want to notify people in a timely way. I think we're doing that and we're getting better at it. And across all of PSD, we are doing it better than we did before NOD was introduced. So we're winning.
I think I totally forgot what I was going to ask. If it comes back to me, I'll ask.
Let's do another online then quickly. Deborah Butchkowski, are triage proposals informed that they were rejected right away, or are they kept waiting 6 to 9 months to?
They're informed. They are. Now I'm trying to remember. I believe they are told at the same time the things that were discussed in panel. So that you don't necessarily get triaged months before the panel would. Two proposals go in at the same time or go to review at the same time. One gets triaged, one doesn't. The one that doesn't get triaged is still being reviewed in the space the next month. So they're not going to wait months and months and months after triage, but they probably wait a month. So it's in between.
Hi, Kate Kraft at APL. First, I just want to say thanks for making our RNA program healthy again. I think that's just fantastic. And we thank everybody who helped make that happen. I had a question about the fact that the proposal pressures, you've seen it gone down kind of overall, and you're encouraging everyone to propose. But I also wanted to ask about the fact that the quality that you're able to accept, and you have increased selection rates. However, there's still a good number, I think, of the very goods that were not selected. And so I was just curious if that, if you can select more of those in the future, since they are very good, and that would even further increase selection rates if the proposal pressure is down overall. I think that would be a helpful to.
We're still spending all our money.
Right. Okay.
Right. I mean, a couple of years, I'm not talking about it now because proposal pressure is up, but a couple of years ago, you may recall, we were talking about how the average cost of proposals was going up every year. Yeah, that's still happening.
Oh, I see.
So, we are selecting more than before. We are selecting a lot more very good than before. Not all of them still, but now it's more like which very goods are we not selecting as opposed to which one can we afford to select. It's a much more satisfying paradigm, quite honestly. But yeah, I'd like to select more of the very goods,
Okay.
but that's money dependent.
Okay, gotcha. And just had a quick one about the DAPR program. I'm sorry if I missed it, but is DAPR planned to go to all programs in the future, or what's the plan?
So
for
yeah,
the
so DAPR,
or the
yes,
dual
DAPR,
anonymous? Yeah.
SMD, all programs within SMD, except the ones that will move to DAPR, except for the very few that don't. There will be a few that don't if there's a specific reason. So for example, our early career awards would make no sense as DAPR because those are proposals about people. So that'd be a case that we don't do it. The NOD programs have not gone DAPR yet because I said when we started NOD, I don't want to conflate two experiments at the same time, like one at a time. If not, if we decide that NOD is successful and we're going to continue it, then all the NOD programs will move to DAPR as soon as we can do it. I expect that next year, all or nearly all of the PSD programs will be DAPR.
Mike Hecht, MIT. And again, I just want to echo the thanks for, a real substantive effort to make this system better. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure we all do. First, a quick question, then a real question. A quick question is where do we get the slides? Maybe that was announced and I missed it. Okay, well, I guess it wasn't announced. I didn't see them on the.
I guess we'll be
LPRC
posting
website.
them.
I guess the talk is archived. The video of the streaming is being recorded, right? So
Okay.
the recording of the talk will be
So
there.
look at the LPSC site. My substantive question had to do, sorry, go ahead.
I'm also reminded, you can always go to the PAC webpage, which will have slides. If we don't put these slides there, it's got all my slides from the PAC meeting that was held
Okay.
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, which has been much of the same material.
You didn't make all new slides for us.
I mean, I made the same number of new slides as you did relative to your last talk.
Touche. My more substantive question has to do with the issue of bad reviews. And I agree with you. A really bad review is rare. There's any number of reviews that are wrong. And when I look at them carefully, I said, yeah, I didn't make that clear. But there are occasional bad reviews. We just experienced one where, essentially a reviewer contradicted Maxwell's equations. And the issue there was that the program officer agreed and said, but we don't have any more money left. And, the ripples of even that very rare review can reflect back into things like how many proposals go in later, people get turned off. Is there any remedy for that situation where, where some money can be tucked aside to remedy mistakes?
Are you suggesting I should carry a programmatic margin in my budget?
Absolutely, or in your back pocket or something.
Actually, I have been starting to plan into the RNA portfolio budget. I've been starting to include a small amount of programmatic margin. Now, in the past couple of years, that's been eaten up by COVID-related things and other events that are, force majeure. And I can't afford to keep all the programs running smoothly and can't carry too large of a reserve. But I do want to carry a small reserve so that we can have a little more flexibility for reconsiderations and some things like that. And Lori's gonna.
Can I just
Thank
add one comment on top of Stephen's? And that is, folks may or may not recall that whenever Stephen came in 4 years ago, there were so many liens against the RNA budget each year that there was zero flexibility, and that really made it extremely difficult to even make the minimum number of selections each year. Stephen has worked so hard to eliminate those liens and really, again, just to reemphasize just how strong the RNA program is right now. We still have places we want to go, but the fact that he's in a position where he can even put any funding aside for some reserve, I think is a huge testament to what he's done. I just wanted to make sure he's not going to say it for himself, but I want to say it for him that he's done a tremendous job. Thanks.
Okay. And I'm going to say it was only possible because I had tremendous support from my boss.
Yeah.
So,
We're nearly out of time,
And
but
thanks
there's
again.
been someone standing at the microphone in Waterway 6. So if we can take the question from Waterway 6.
Yeah, I'm in Spanner, Arizona. State University, I live in the off. You can't see me. So I was wondering about the low selection rate of PDART. That's been like an ongoing thing. Why is it a ugly duckling of doses?
that I believe will be an anomaly. Basically, PDART had an outstanding, had a larger than normal set of selections in 20. And that created sort of a bow wave of out-year funding requirements, such that last year, there wasn't a lot of money available for new awards. So while it only went up, while its selection rate only went up a little bit compared to the previous year, this year I think it's going to go up a lot. So I think that problem is I think that problem is going to go away. The bigger question is what will happen with PDAR when people start proposing more tool proposals and we start trying to do some of the longer term support for software tools. Is that going to eat into that budget? That's something we're going to have to keep an eye on because we want to keep that program healthy too. And I don't want lots of long-term liens or obligations, I should say, of funding, but we also want to make sure that the tools have homes and have support.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
That concludes our time.
Thank you all for coming. I'm
sorry, we're going to sit.